Hello, everybody, and welcome to EduMatch. Thank you so much for joining us. So you can follow along with us at podcast with an s.edumatch.org/tweet talk. And tonight, I am so excited to chat with Jason Falconio, who wrote an amazing chapter in EduSnap 17, which is out now. You can see the Kindle version, the paperback version, and the free PDF at edumatch.org/books. So welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Thanks. So it's so great to have you on here. So let me tell y'all a little bit about Jason. So Jason has been teaching secondary science for 12 years in both public and charter schools in Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. Since 2010, he has been teaching at Frere Charter School in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He's currently teaching biology and AP biology. Past courses include physics, anatomy and physiology, and general science. In addition to teaching, he is also an instructional coach and the science department chair. He founded and directed several STEM programs, including robotics. In the summer, he works for the Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth as a site director. He has his master's degree in education leadership from Penn State, and in 2017, he was named an ASCD Emerging Leader. So that is so awesome, Jason. Like just your background is just so rich, and I'm so glad that you contributed a chapter for this year's book.
Thank you. It seems like a lot when you put it all in one place, but like doesn't seem like a lot to me.
I feel you. It never feels that way unless we live it, right? So
Somebody else reads it to you.
there you go. Absolutely. So what inspired you to go into education?
Um, I was not planning on going to teaching when I went to college. I had some great teachers in high school. I wanted to go into wildlife sciences. So that was my first 2 years in college. I was an outdoorsman growing up. I was always outside. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Around my junior year at Penn State, I kind of decided that wasn't the route for me. So I took a couple of courses, and one of which was an intro to education class. Now, it might be different now, but it was really neat. As soon as we started, they basically just took us to a school once a week. And you would spend one full day in the school and then a couple hours a week kind of debriefing as to how it went. And it was really, really interesting. It was kind of the first time a college professor kind of like knew my name, because Penn State's a big place, had high expectations for me, made me iron my pants, iron my shirt, put on a tie, show up on time, all that good stuff. And she was very passionate about teaching. And I realized two things that I kind of didn't realize before: that teaching was a lot of fun and I liked it. And so that kind of began the journey. After that, I switched my major, and I've been the same since.
Wow, what a story. So I like the more I talk to people, the more I hear about how like they kind of fell in love with teaching like a little later on. So that is just so cool. That seems to be like kind of a running theme. So that is super cool, super cool. All right, so you're connected with other educators. So what's been your own journey in connecting, and what have you learned along the way?
Oh, it's long. And I'd say sometimes I go kicking and screaming. So when I was first teaching down in Maryland, I had a wonderful school, but I wasn't really connected to anybody outside the school. I was kind of like, I mean, honestly, I'm aging myself a little bit. It was pre-Twitter. So then when I moved up to Philadelphia, I'm at an even smaller school, really tight-knit. We're like family, but very, very small. So I started occasionally using Twitter, and I just happened to reach out to get in some chat with a gentleman named Barry Sade. And he runs a conference, and he's like, "You should present at the conference." I was like, "Okay." So I presented at the conference, and then he put me on the steering committee for the conference. I'm on the steering committee for the conference for the last 3 years. And that got me basically to meet some more people. And then that group led me to another group, which led me to another group, which led me to here.
Well, that is super cool. So, all right. So, yeah, I know Barry. He's a great guy. So, absolutely. So, you're a contributing author in EduSnap 17. So, what can people expect to read in your chapter?
Well, when I wrote it originally, I'll be honest, I wrote it for me. I guess that's one style of writing I use. It was more of a reflective piece over the summer to think about where I've been in my career the last 12 years, what I think matters to students and to me in my classroom. Like if I could distill it down to maybe 5 or 6 things that really make a difference for my kids, what would those things be? I'm hoping those things help other people. And I think they probably will, but that wasn't my intent. My intent was just kind of like, think out for my classroom and me, what's made the difference with my kids. Like you mentioned in a previous conversation, we had like the 80-20 rule. Like what are the big things that make a difference?
Absolutely. So looking at those big things that make a difference. Absolutely. All right. So for you, for yourself, what was your spark?
Um, I think I've had a couple of sparks, but I'd say the most recent spark, becoming aware of what really makes a difference with students. Um, that didn't happen in my first, say, a couple of years of education. You're kind of learning all the teacher moves, right? You're just, when you get in front of a class the first time, you're just learning how to get through the period and do some things. And over time, you get better at doing those things and you get better at developing relationships with kids. And then after a while, it starts to become unconscious. You just kind of get in there and you do your thing. And then you leave, and then you do your thing, and then another kids come in and you do your thing again. And you don't really think about what it is that you're doing. Some is successful, some not successful. And so when I began thinking about, all right, what is working and why, what isn't working and why, throw out the things that aren't working, do more of the things that are working. And that was kind of like my spark to think about, one, my classroom, and two, other classrooms. So how do I help a new teacher on that journey when they're not maybe ready for that unconscious kind of like meta teaching, but they just need those teacher moves, or you're working with a more senior teacher who's been in like an unconscious teacher for years, not in a bad way, unconscious teacher, but like in a good way, right? They're just not thinking a lot of those things are subsurface that they're doing in the classroom. And so kind of my spark for me was thinking about, how did I go from there to there? And where else do I have to go, right? Like I'm only halfway through my career, maybe less than. So like and I don't think I'm the best teacher I can be. So, or the best instructional coach I can be. So how do I think about what I do in my classroom so that I can take those things and improve on them, and take the things I don't do well and either get rid of them or improve on them if I think they're going to work?
Absolutely. So that self-reflection piece is critical. So, yeah, absolutely. All right. So you talked a lot about how you can establish like better relationships with your students. So what are some tips for educators to establish these better relationships?
Well, I think, first and foremost, like we're in the people business. We sometimes forget that. And we work with humans, and humans are fallible people, and we're included in that group, right? And so like a lot of times you have a lot of pressure. You have pressure from your administration. You have pressure from state scores. You have pressure from parents, pressure from kids. But you have to realize that you're in the people business. And people need to know, it's almost like those rules of kindergarten, right? Like people need to know that they're cared for, that they're going to be safe in your room, that they're respected, and their voice is heard. And so whatever that looks like in your classroom, I think those are kind of like your first steps, right? Like if a kid doesn't think you care about them, very little learning is going to occur, even in high school. If a student doesn't think that they have a voice, or they can't tell you, listen, Mr. Jason, I did not like that lesson, did not make any sense to me at all. If they don't feel comfortable telling you that, then they're not in a position to get help and to learn. And so like I saw a poster once, like it was like everything you learn in life, you learn from kindergarten. And sometimes I think that's sort of true, right? Like we're all just like little kids running around, wanting to be cared for and want to be safe and respected. And even our students, even high school students, 17, 18-year-old teenagers who are amongst the toughest of the tough to teach, in no way, shape, or form is it any easier than anybody else, but I think they're sometimes pretty challenging. They still want to know, like, did you listen to me when I told you about my weekend? Do you care that I improved 4%, but I still didn't pass? Do you like what I said to the class? Was that good? Was that right? Could I say it better? Those sorts of things. So it's a lot of things like saying hello. It's that simple. Checking in. I do a weekly check-in with them where I ask them, hey, we're going to take about 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, and we're going to check in with the class. How are we? How was your weekend? How was your break? How were things? If a student isn't doing well, I want to make sure they tell me. I always pull a couple of kids every couple of days and say, hey, how was the lesson? And like, I do it enough times where they'll tell me, nah, it wasn't very good. Or I have no idea what you're talking about. And so like, even if I get formative assessment that tells me it was a pretty good lesson, if I get 5 or 6 kids that throughout the day tell me, no, I have no idea what you're talking about, that's a really good indicator, and it's important for them to feel comfortable doing so.
Absolutely. So establishing that relationship where they can come to you and give you that feedback. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, as high school teachers, sometimes like there's the old saying, like, don't smile until December. I don't know. You know, I think there's an old phrase that I like called warm but fair, or firm but warmer. It was one of those. But like the idea of just being comfortable and warm, but also being, or strict and warm. Sorry, strict, warm. You know, saying what you mean, meaning what you say, all that stuff, that's important, but also being warm and friendly and open.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you could give one piece of advice to anybody who's watching right now, then what would that be?
Be kind and be present. That's kind of my motto this year in my classroom, just be present. Be with the kid that you need to be with at the moment. If you ask the kid a question, be there. If you have a lot of things that are going on in your day, while you're in that room and you're teaching, be in that moment and be in that relationship and work with that thing, with that student or group of students or full class. That's kind of the biggest thing that you can just start to develop your skills in getting better at relationships, understanding what kids are saying and what they mean when they say those things. Being the present is probably the first step to getting there.
Absolutely. So I couldn't agree more with you. So that it's just been a pleasure to speak with you, and definitely I've loved reading your chapter. I recommend that everybody else check it out as well. So how can people get a hold of you if they want to get in touch with you online?
I am on Twitter. It's at first name, last name, at Jason Falconio. Sorry, it's a long Italian name, but it's my name.
That is awesome. So thank you so much, Jason. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us tonight. So for everybody watching, then you want to tune in tomorrow, same bad no, not same bad time, but same bad channel, podcast.edumatch.org/tweet talk. We'll be talking to Natasha Rachel at 5:30 and Fernando Chavez at 6:30. These are all Eastern Standard Times. So everybody have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And check out EduSnap17, hashtag EduSnap17. You can see the link edumatch.org/books. All right, take it easy, everybody.